Welcome to the Unlock Your Culture Webcast, a monthly discussion about preserving traditional fire service culture in the modern setting. With your hosts, Sean Duffy, Pablo Gener, John Hayowyk, and Marc Aloan. We hope you enjoy the show. All right, so there we are with our first episode with our new and improved introduction. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for episode 4 with our good friend Jeremy Sanders. Got me and Duffy tonight. Hopefully Pablo jumps in here. He's at work, and John had some prior commitments, so we're going to miss out on him tonight. I know I'm looking forward to this. Sean, you psyched?
Oh, I'm super stoked. I've been talking to Jeremy for a little bit now, and we've been tossing around this idea, and I think it's just going to be a good topic for all of us, for all ranks in the fire service, and I think we're going to have some good conversation with it, though. I'm pretty stoked about it.
Yeah, man, I'm ready too. So without further ado, we're going to let Jeremy give himself the brief intro, as you told me, as much or as little as you care to share, sir, and we'll get down to business.
First of all, thank you guys very, very much. I've been really excited about coming on and doing this as well. All 4 of you guys are people that I really have looked up to and just enjoy hearing anything you put out. So thank you very much. But my name is Jeremy Sanders. I have been a firefighter for probably about 18 and a half years now in central Oklahoma, kind of a suburban of Oklahoma City department. I actually live up by Tulsa, so got a little bit of a drive. Spend it listening to books and podcasts and different things like that, and just have really enjoyed kind of growing here the past year and a half or so. Just have kind of experienced almost a rebirth, I've called it, in my career, and fired up for fire service and fired up for crew culture and just anything, tradition and culture wise. I can't get enough of it. So I'm just excited to get here and talk with anybody really about stuff like this. So that's about as quick as I can make it right there.
Well, good. So for anybody who doesn't know, I'll just touch on what the topic of tonight is. And the topic is grow through humility. And we know in the fire service, when it comes to humility, we really have 2 options. You're either going to be, humble yourself or become humbled, right? Those are the 2 pathways you choose. So I'll leave it at there. If you want to step into anything you have to share, Jeremy, I know we got a list of a couple different notes. So just pick where you want to start, and we'll just go from there.
Well, personally, I think probably the best place to start is just where this started. Sean kind of mentioned this to me a while back, and it's something that I was hoping that I'd had the chance to do. But once that conversation was brought up, it's like, oh crap, when you guys have guests on, they kind of bring something with them, and I'm sitting here thinking, crap, I don't know what the heck I'm going to bring with me. I feel like there's not many areas that I'm just comfortable just laying it out and maybe adding value to anybody's life or career. So it was just a little bit of a struggle trying to figure out what I would be comfortable talking about. And as that conversation in my head went, I started realizing that, man, I think one thing that I do have a pretty good handle on is humility. And this year in particular has been a very humbling experience for me personally. I've been a station officer for, I think, almost 3 years now. So still fairly new in the role, just have a lot to learn still. With all the challenges that have happened this year, man, I have been humbled over and over again, and not just at work, at home too. We're talking about being humbled as a leader in the fire service and being humbled as a leader at home too. I've had a lot of experiences that have brought me down to ground level, and I've just had to kind of continue to build up, and I'll lose it again and build up, and it's just been a process. And so the good news is, though, that I think when you get to that point when you are humbled, it puts you in a really good spot to learn. And so that is kind of where I've been this year. I've really had an opportunity to be a part of like a mindset that is very willing to learn, very willing to try hard and just pick up the pieces from one day and build something better the next day. And so that's kind of what brought me, to the point of saying, hey, I think I could do a little bit of, discussion on being humble and all that. And like Sean says, there's several kind of points that we'll get into, but really that's what brought me to this point is just kind of that story. And so I'm excited to not only share what I've learned and share kind of how I use it and view humility and learning through that and growth, but hearing from these guys as well. So that's a little bit of why we're at the subject that we're on.
Is there any specific challenges that you think you might have faced throughout this year that kind of humbled you? One particular that really stands out?
I'd have a hard time picking out one, because it's almost like there's so many areas that I've learned and that I have been humbled in, and it's different situations that happen each time. There's situations that, going back to home, just realizing that, man, I thought I was doing good. I thought I was trying to do the good thing. I was trying to do the right thing. I thought that I was taking care of everything like they were supposed to be taken care of, my priorities, all that. And, I wasn't. So there was a lot of humility there, trying to figure out, okay, I've got to put my priorities in check. I've got to value my time and put my time where it should be and things like that. As far as work, I think the biggest struggle that I'm currently dealing with is just followership, humbling myself to the point of being a good follower, because right now, just situations as they are, I just feel like it's hard for me to be a good follower because of some of the rules that are being put down, some of the, the leadership models that I'm seeing. And it goes against a lot of what I feel is my message and my mission. And so I think that is the current situation that I'm really kind of struggling to get a handle on. So it's all different. And man, I think that's probably the case with all of us. I think the biggest thing that we need to make sure we're doing is, first off, see what's going on, see that these things are a problem, and that you need to get into a mindset that learns from that. And then next is just doing something about it, making the changes that you need, admitting that you don't know everything, or that what you believed in firmly and spoke out for firmly was wrong, and there's a better way, just whatever it is, just figuring out areas that we need to grow and putting the work in to do them. That's kind of the biggest thing right there.
Yeah, I feel like it's a common story, man. Like the more people you talk to, the more people you get down that rabbit hole. It's always, I had this conversation with a chief that I'm pretty, acquainted with yesterday, and he had a public Facebook post about, like the biggest failure of his career. And I said, it kind of always links back to like there's usually some kind of failure point, right? That makes you humble. It makes you learn the value of that. And that's, if you watch the people that are out there speaking, it's generally a pretty good theme. So that kind of ties into one of my questions I wanted to ask you on the humility aspect is, do you think you can ever get too humble? And what I mean by that is, can you go down that route of self-deprivation where you become so humble that you almost start that negative path to where you can't do anything right? You only recognize your failures. You're unable to, take the praise when it's actually due, and, celebrate your successes because you're just so focused on improvement through humility that you just, you don't know how to just say, okay, I did good today, and that's okay, and I can stop there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's actually a conversation that we had, you and I, on the episode you were on my show, is either side of extremes when you're dealing with, anything, everything. is generally not the best place to be. It's somewhere in that middle sweet spot is where you really are doing the best to be. And that goes through every aspect of everything to do with life, I feel like. And so, yeah, absolutely. If all you're doing is downing yourself and you know, I think what you're talking about is even to the point of not having any confidence. When you're like that, it's going to be very hard to gain confidence. And man, confidence is huge for us. And that's kind of, to go into that, I feel like I can say without a doubt, learning and growth, it just can't happen without humility. You have to be willing to say, somebody else knows something more than I do. Somebody else is better at something than I am. I need to get better at, air quotes, whatever it is. And that is humility right there, stepping aside and saying that I want to learn something new. I need to grow, whatever it is. And so to me, it's a cycle. And you could start with humility and go from there. And humility really, as you get humility, you start to grow, you start to learn. And as you're learning, you're gaining confidence, you're gaining competency and all the stuff you do. And that's the sweet spot right there. Because if we keep it there in that humility and confidence and just kind of figure out a way to balance it in that area, we're doing great. But as soon as we go a little bit further, that's when we fall into complacency, because we're getting too confident, in our whatever it is. And we start getting some complacency. We stop learning. We stop being as humble. And then right after that complacency is at some point failure.
Yeah,
And that failure is at the bottom right there.
I think you hit it right there. Confidence, man. I think it's a struggle. If you go so far down that humble road that you can't get back to confident, then you've just, made the situation worse, by trying to make it better. So I saw Pablo was on here, Sean. I was going to let him kind of chime in. Did he have to run?
Yeah, I think so, because he kind of disappeared on here.
Pablo got to run. He'll be back, maybe. Go ahead, Sean. You're up.
No, what I was going to say on that is too, like with being humble, there's a certain level of accountability that comes with that. Like you have to be accountable for yourself, because if you're not, then you won't even have any responsibility. So what I mean by that part of things is anytime that we train people or we're showing them or anything, right, that we do, we're taking a certain level of commitment, right? So you have to be willing to fail in front of others and understand that, like, hey, I own that, right? You could be as humble as you want, but those are just words. Like you have to follow that through with action. And I think that's where the accountability comes in is, everybody's got like, mountains they got to climb, none of us are perfect. And, we always strive to get better every day at whatever it is that we have on our list of things to improve on. Right. So if you can't look at somebody and understand and say, hey man, I messed up, I'm sorry. Or, hey, like Jeremy was saying, I don't know this, but you seem to know that, please show me. Then we have zero responsibility for anything that happens to ourselves or other people in that whole circle. And I think that's something that we have to maintain when we're looking at our humility.
Yeah, and I think you hit a point there too, Sean, right? Like you don't have to be bad to be humble, right? Like you don't have to be bad to have humility. You're a human. You have bad days, you have bad shifts, you have bad fire calls. That doesn't mean you're a bad firefighter. I fail sometimes as a company officer. Jeremy, I know you can relate to this, where you have a situation and with one of your crew members and you go home the next day and you're like, I totally handled that wrong, right? Like I was either too understanding or I was too hard on them, or, I wanted my preference and I didn't let them grow. And I don't think people realize that side of the company officer thing with humility and development is that you're always second guessing yourself until you get to that level of confidence. And then just when you feel you're confident in your ability to lead, you get kicked in the stomach again, right? You start the process all over. So,
it's funny that you bring that up, Mark, because, we're all imperfect, right? So I think passion leads us down to a lot of things, right? That our decision-making process, and we can easily become so passionate about something that we may not react to something in the right manner. Like you said, how you handle something, you might think about it later and go, man, maybe I could have handled that better. that right there takes a certain sense of humility to come back and grab a hold of that person and say, hey man, you know, I was kind of out of line, or, you know, maybe I didn't approach this in the same manner. Like, let's have a conversation so that we can understand where each other are at. And, you know, you can respectfully disagree. That's okay too. But the one thing that with humility is you have to like put your ego aside. You have to, right? Because if you let ego get in the way, man, you're just halting any progress for everybody. You know, so that kind of defeats the whole purpose.
I got something for you on that when you get a chance.
There he is.
Oh, there he is. What's up, man?
There was no F-bomb to let me know that he had arrived. So, you know.
Come on, boys and girls.
Yeah,
I saw a girl in there too. Hey, I'm joining you from station today. So if we get a run, we get a run. Joining with my lieutenant for the day. Come on, buddy. Lieutenant Cooper. They tricked me.
You just called him over there like he was your dog. Come over here, buddy. Come on.
He is the Marion County Fools president, so he's our foolish president joining me for the evening.
Rock on, Lou. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate you guys. So I got just a random thought, and this will go out there for everybody that's listening to chime in, right? So we talk about humility, we talk about ego, and all that type of stuff. At what point, so this is just a broad statement, at what point do we do a disservice to ourselves by not knowing or not letting people know our own self-worth? Like, so then we start getting into the argument of, and I wrote this down, people's shoes, and I think a couple of you have heard me talk about this, like, oh, I want you to put yourself in their shoes. You want me to put myself in whose shoes? Why? I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I go work out. I look at more videos than I should be looking at. I go to more conferences than I should be going to. I take some personal time sometimes to go to trainings. I try to better myself in every aspect that I can, not only physically, mentally, academically, for this particular job, because I enjoy it. Not because anything else, because I enjoy it. But then you ask me to put myself in other people's shoes. Those people can't put themselves in my shoes. So at what point, so this is just an argument there, just to throw it out there to the internet land. At what point do we not say, oh man, I know my self-worth, and then we start getting into, especially for the station officers and stuff like that, like, like when you get someone in your crew that might not put in as much work as someone else, like how do you treat that other person, or what, do you treat them at all? Do you treat everybody as equals? Where I am very outspoken about this. There is different levels of talent to this job. This job is no different at all than from being a professional athlete, than from being a mathematician. You know what? Because if I have to, do some level of calculus shit or whatever the hell you guys do in the back of ambulances, that you got to be smart for that. You got to do hydraulics. You got to be smart for that. You got to be able to throw audibles on the fly to be able to do truck work, especially low man truck staffing. Like, what am I doing? How am I throwing ladders? Am I taking utilities? Am I third due? Am I fourth due? There's so many things that have to go through up here. So, and not only that, but physically speaking, I got to be able to do the job too. So there's, at some point or another, I cannot stand, like, I will not apologize for saying that there's different levels of talent to this. Just because we wear the same shirt, sure as hell doesn't mean that we do the same job. That's literally like saying that just because we have a fucking driver's license, we drive a car the same way. It doesn't work like that. If I put a hitch on the back of a trailer right now and ask one of you guys that's watching to back it up 25 feet, one of you guys is going to jackknife that motherfucker. I'm just saying, there's different levels of talent to everything that we do. So why do we pretend like there isn't different levels of talent here? And at some point or another, when do we not know our self-worth? And when do we start? Yeah, T-Safe, they shit ain't for everybody. By the way, I wish one of our station t-shirts has that. Anyway, absolutely, T-Safe, man. Shout out to the boys down in the city of Miami for that. That's such a great statement. The shit ain't for everybody. But I get it, man. You could be humble, and this is where, from an instructor standpoint, you do have to be humble. You can't, you don't belittle anybody. This has nothing to do with belittling anybody. This has nothing to do with you think I'm better than you or nothing. This is just purely, do you know your self-worth? And that's just a question out there for you guys. That's, you know, a little hot topic there.
So that really boils down to measurement, right? How do you measure yourself? How do you measure your success? How do you measure your failures? Because if it's not being measured, right, then really, how do you know if it's ever improved on? So I think Jeremy's got something that he wanted to touch on measurement. If I'm not sure, I'll just let him take over from there. You got anything there, Jeremy?
You talking about the growth, the daily growth stuff?
Yeah, the daily growth through measurement, right? Like you talk about measuring yourself, and obviously, like you said, if you measured yourself from where you were 5 years ago to today, you might see drastic improvement. But if you come back and you measure yourself from like maybe last week and you haven't done any training, where is your improvement at? So I want you to kind of touch on that and explain that to everybody.
Yeah, and that's something that I've kind of came across here, just something that I thought that has come to mind here in probably the past 3 or 4 months is, you know, I see a lot of people that, you know, the subject or the kind of the topic is, you know, the only comparison is yourself, or the only person you're competing with is yourself, and all that. And I get that, but there is a big difference from saying, am I better than yesterday, or am I better than I was 10 years ago? And it's such a, it's just a big there could be a big discrepancy, I guess I would say, as far as the further back you go. And like Sean said, that's why I'm saying that is, if I stick to, am I better than I was yesterday, then I always know that I am getting better, or I am getting worse, or basically status quo. If I compare myself to anything further back than that, then that information is skewed. You know, I probably had, just guessing here, probably about 5-6 years ago, I had a pretty good slump. I did not like the rank I was in. I had a lot of stuff going on at home. I didn't have the energy for the job. I was there for the paycheck. That was the mindset I was at that time, basically because I was trying to survive life at that point. And so if I sit here and I say, you know what, I'm way better than I was 6 years ago. I'm doing so much more than I did then. I have grown an amazing amount since then. Well, that is absolutely the case. But that, what you don't see when you're looking at that is, like Sean said, I may have not done anything the whole past month. I might have not reached out and gained any knowledge through writing or podcast or classes or anything like that. I might not have trained physically to put my hands on anything to learn technique or any realm of any kind of learning or growth. I may have not gotten anything in the past month. But if I'm looking far back into the past, it skews my vision of where I am. And I hope that kind of makes sense, because when you compare yourself to yesterday, there is no gray area. You're either doing it or you're not doing it. And so that gives me the best barometer of where I'm at today, and hopefully kind of continuing on that growth. And that's what I was talking about. And something else to go along with that too is, you know, if you think that you have to have these eye-opening, just epiphany moments to feel like you're doing something good for the day, or that's what it takes to get better for each day, it's not the case. I mean, just reading an article, learning something you didn't know, going out and training and learning a technique that you didn't know, or getting better at a technique that you were. No, it's that 1%. And that's what Sean was talking about is, okay, 1% sounds like nothing. But if you add up the 1% of every single day, as the weeks go, as the months go, as the years go, that is a lot of better that you've gotten. And that's kind of what I want to really pass on to everybody. It's not the, you know, the award-winning ideas that come out. It's the little days of the just barely, man, I feel like I had a better handle on a nozzle today. It kind of finally clicked for me. That's it. That's what you're looking for right there. It's just getting a little bit better every day and keeping that going.
I love that you just went there, because this is exactly perfectly into what I was going to get at with you, which is um, going into the growth aspect of things. I think too often when we talk about growth, we talk about, like, developing from that recruit firefighter, to a firefighter knows what's going on, to the senior firefighter, the officer, right? But part of growth too is understanding that just because you fall into this way of doing things that works really, really, really well for you, right? It's never failed you. Maybe it's a hose load or a forcible entry technique, whatever. It's your pride and joy you put up against anything, right? But eventually you get so comfortable in it that you no longer try to defend it. And I think for a lot of people, you have to try other things. You have to almost try to disprove your theory to make sure it's still relevant, or you become the person that's the way we've always done it. You almost stop growing. So it's not always about learning something new, or okay, well, I've been doing the Minuteman for the past 5 years, it's time to move on to the flat load. No, it's like, okay, it's time again for me to prove to myself and my crew that this is the best method. And I do that by trying other methods, not necessarily because I want to go to those methods, but more because I have to keep putting my way against the other ways out there to show that it is superior. Otherwise, I'm not growing, I'm just becoming stagnant, right?
Something kind of along those lines. I had a conversation with John Hayowyk and Sean Egan here last week, and Sean talked about an example in his department that really kind of plays into this. And he basically just talked about how he likes to vent a pitched roof, I think is what he was talking about. He's done it for so long. He has the way that he knows is the best way to do it. And he's done it to the point that he can back it up. Well, he basically, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, but basically he got put into a crew that doesn't do it that way. They do it a completely different way. But he saw that they knew what the heck they were doing, and they were doing a good job of it. And so he had two options there, obviously. One option is to say, I understand you guys are, you know what you're doing, you do a good job, but this is how I want to do it. So we're going to do it this way. Or you can take a humble leadership maturity approach and say, you guys are doing a great job. Keep it up. Here's something else I want to show you, that maybe if that doesn't work, here's another good option just to have in your toolbox. And that's what he did. And I think that is a perfect example of somebody that could have, stood his ground and took, the ego route, because he knew how to do it. But he didn't. He allowed them to do the job that they know how to do very well. And he did say that he showed them how to do his way too. And so they, it's just when somebody's doing it right, everybody benefits from it. And hopefully everybody starts on the same kind of path, because it's an amazing journey when you have others with you trying to grow every day. And if you're trying to do it by yourself, it goes into the accountability that Sean was talking about earlier. If you're on a journey of personal growth, daily personal growth by yourself, man, it is a struggle. It's a fight. And having others with you makes it so much easier. And it's nice to have people to back you up.
Hey, Jeremy, on that
Yeah.
note, by the way, talking about like what it's cool to have people, buying in and stuff like that. Like I said, I'm at the firehouse right now, but buying in, obviously I got my loot here. 6 months on the job. District captain for Marion County, TRT, 26 years on the job, hanging out, seeing what we're doing. Buying is huge. If you don't have buying in your department, buying is huge to what you're doing, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about, man. If you're on a crew of, it doesn't matter how many there are, it could be 3 or it could be 12 or 15, whatever. If you're by yourself on that mission to make yourself better every day, it's gonna be a hard journey to take. And so each person that you can get on that same journey with you, you're just exponentially increasing the possibilities of where you all can go. So it's huge.
What you got,
Yeah,
Sean?
I think that's great. And one of the thing, and this is a question, it's real simple. I want everyone to think about. You can answer in the comments. You can unmute your mics, do whatever you want. When we're talking about humility, right? Does everybody agree or disagree that a lot of that is in your approach to things, right? We're talking, especially when we're talking about creating buy-in, right? Pablo and I talk when we do the search class, right? We talk about how your approach to things makes or breaks success. And the example that we like to use is you can have a Christian on the side of the street with a sign saying, "You must repent, Jesus is coming, Jesus is coming." Or you can have somebody whose approach to things is a little less scary, right? Who do you think people are going to want to listen to with that particular message? Probably the people that have more of a not such a direct approach, but more of an approach as they actually care, right? And they want to bring you in, and they're there to help you. So the question, the other side of that question is it about inspiring people or manipulating people to get what we need to get, right? And you don't have to answer. Those are just things that I want to throw out for people to think about.
It's a matter of synonyms, I think, right? Same word used dubiously or for the greater good. But to kind of build on what you're saying there too, and not to kind of go devil's advocate on you, but I think this is the other side of that coin too, is that most people will find that for some reason that whole approach thing only applies to motivated people. The mutts can act however they want, whenever they want. They can bash you, they can treat you like crap. And for some reason, the fire service, right? The fire department as a whole generally bows down to the lower standard. You don't ever or I won't say ever, but you rarely hear of situations where administration or the company officers or the battalions, whatever, are telling the lowest common denominator, "Hey, you need to step your game up because everybody else is passing you." It's always, "Hey there, person that's out front, you need to back it down. You need to rein it in. You're making people look bad," right? And I'm not saying that in my situation. I'm saying I hear that everywhere I go, everybody I talk to. So I hate that. I think that discourages people, that the people that are trying to do the most or trying to make the most change, they always feel like they have to constantly adjust. And at what point is somebody going to adjust for me? When can I come to work and just be me and be wide open and hungry in who I am versus always having to try to be a used car salesman to try to manipulate. I'm going to take your word, Sean, to manipulate people who don't want to do the job how it's meant to be done, right? That's now my responsibility as a motivated person. I think that's why people get tired. They get exhausted because they have to be 7 different people a day. And when is it somebody's turn to say, "Hey, I'm not really passionate, but I'm going to be fired up for you today, Cap," or, "Hey, like when is it that turn?" So that's my flip side of that argument, I guess.
No, that's a great argument. And the reason I bring those two words up is because just like anything, right? Depending on who you're asking, they can mean different things, right? And what I rather do is I rather use my humility and pull somebody to the side and say, "Hey man, look, I get it. I once was where you're at. Okay. I shared your same views, but this is what happened to me and this was the outcome. So I know how you feel. I've been there before and this is what I found out." Right. And when you take that approach to them, maybe they're more open-minded rather than trying to force feed them why they should believe something, right? Even though it might be in their best interest, you can't force somebody to change their mind. And Chief Edwards talks about that. Changing minds requires changing hearts. And I personally feel like the way that you're going to be able to do that is through your actions, right? How you carry yourself throughout your shift or even off duty or whatever. We tend to talk about a lot of things as firehouse only, and it's not. When we leave the firehouse, we're still normal people, right? We all have social media accounts. Obviously, we're on one right now, right? How you behave on those says a lot about you too. So you can go to work and pretend to be one way, and then when you're not there, you're exact opposite way. Well, if I'm looking at that, you think that I'm going to believe anything you say? No. So when somebody calls you out and says, "Hey man, you were just preaching about wearing your gear or whatever it is and doing all these things in this training, and I saw you do this," that's where you have to humble yourself. And that's where the approach comes into things and say, "You know what? Yeah, I made a mistake. I'm sorry." If you butt heads and you want to argue about that, then now your ego gets in the way and you turn them off completely. And I think that's the whole point, is inspire people to do the right things. Don't just force them to.
Yeah, for sure. I don't disagree. I just think, you go back to, like, I think we talk about this every episode, 10, 80, 10, right? The bottom 10, the middle 80, the top 10. And we just continue to spend all that time with the bottom 10, and you allow them to have that opposite influence on the 80, right? Because that's who you argue with, right? That's who you get. You have to, again, have the humility and the maturity to just say, we're not doing this today, right? You don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear it. Fine. And I'm going to go walk away. I'm going to find somebody else, or I'm going to do it by myself. But I like to share that other side of the coin, because the people that I meet that are so frustrated in their apartments, that's what they're up against, right? It's always somebody telling them that they have to change their approach. And when is it somebody else's turn to change theirs towards, what progresses an apartment? So,
well, I'll tell you on that, like, so there's this view that I have, and people may agree or they may disagree, and that's fine. But I always say, how come I'm always asked to lower my standards to your expectations?
bingo.
But when I ask you to raise your expectations or your standards to my expectations, all of a sudden we got a problem, right? And that's where the approach again comes into that, is you could tell that to somebody, but be prepared for a discussion, right? Because those people who are unwilling to change didn't just happen to wake up one day and say, I'm unwilling to change. That's years and years and years of mindset built in for whatever reason that brought them away from their focus, right? So maybe there's something you do, or maybe there's something you say that just makes it click, and then you have to follow up with that, right? We can have a discussion at the dinner table, and that's fine, but if that's all it ever goes is to that table, and we all go about our ways and we never revisit that, then what's it worth, and what does it mean?
Yeah, and I'm going to tie back to something Jeremy said earlier, and let him get in on this. You more or less were talking about the ebbs and flows of your career, right? You're up, you're down, you're up, you're down. And I was put onto that by, Nozzle Forward talks about that with the fire frequency in a city, right? Eventually, you get to decay, the city burns, and then it gets rebuilt, right? So fires go down because property values go up, and eventually it plateaus and comes back down. And the same is very true for our motivation, right? Nobody is up every day. Nobody is all in every. Nobody. I don't care who you are, how passionate you are. Nobody comes to the firehouse every single day and gives 110%. It is impossible. So, going back to what you talked about earlier, you were in a bad place, right? Luckily, you got out of it. But do you think perhaps the reason we get in these situations is because people get trapped in those bad places, and we make excuses, or they're in this environment that doesn't allow them to get out of it, and maybe where does that humility and growth come into that, to waking you up basically to realize, like you did, right? I'm in a bad place, so I can either sit here and rot, or I can do something about it and be better tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the big bad word right there. What you just said is excuses. Man, if you're on that train of excuses, and that's what you lean on, there's no stopping it until you're ready to stop it. Because if your shoulder's hurting today, so you can't do training, or if you got whatever's going on. I mean, anybody could sit there and come up with an excuse every day to avoid anything going on, to avoid any growth, any learning, any kind of getting outside of your comfort zone. There is an excuse for it that you can find. And so if that's the routine that you're in, I don't have an answer for that. I wish I did. I want to hear an answer, because that's a struggle as a station officer, when you get people like that, on how to break them out of that cycle, to make them wake up and see that all you're doing is just giving excuses. Why do you do it? And something else that kind of, to go into a little bit further, like what Sean, I guess both of you were talking about right there. Another piece of this is, yes, I had some down times as a firefighter. I've had a lot of stuff I've lived through personally. Some stuff, lived through some stuff. I can either go through those times and just put them away and act like they never happened, and do nobody any good with them, or I can do some good with those situations and help somebody in whatever walk they're in. And that takes, again, humility. if and this is something that's happened to me, I've been approached by somebody and asked me, man, you weren't fired up like this a while back. Why do you expect others to be this fired up right now? And I know that question is kind of asked in a lot of different scenarios. It's like, you've always stood on this side of the fence, and now you're on the other side. Why? Why should we come over there with you? Well, maybe I didn't know what I know now back then. Maybe I didn't have anybody to inspire me to get on that other side of the fence. Maybe I was just trying, like I said earlier, just trying to survive life. And now that I'm past that, I know where I should be. And there's it's very dynamic. I mean, I'm not obviously going to give all the answers to those scenarios right now, but then to be able to say, hey, you're absolutely right. I used to be in a slump. I used to not be fired up for the fire service. I used to come here, make it through the day, and go back home. I absolutely, that was the case. But I had this going on in life, and it was a struggle, and that's the best I could do. Or I didn't have anybody with me to really pick me up and lead me to a better place, or whatever it is. To be humble and use those experiences that could be negative experiences, could be things that maybe even people look down on you for, but to use those to help people. And that is a big deal, because you never know when that person you're telling that story to feels like they are the only people dealing with that. And you telling them that helps them to realize, hey, he dealt with the same thing. He made it through. He's doing great right now. I think I can do it too. Or just so many different benefits from that. And just to try to inspire somebody to do better. I mean, that, to me, that's like a lofty goal for me. The word inspiration, to be inspiring. I'm not blessed with like a Jocko, charisma and super awesome voice, and all the stuff that he's been through. And that is really like as somebody that I wish that I could be like. I'm just not. So I have to deal with the things I have. I have to use what I've been through, use the things I've learned to help people in those ways. And so that's what everybody has to figure out, is everybody has something to give, some way to help, something to do to help others. You just got to figure out what that is and be honest with yourself when you're having that digging in within yourself to figure that out.
Well, I just want to say, first of all, I think you have a very soothing podcast voice, and I listen to you for hours going back and forth to work. So I think I'm plenty qualified to say that.
Good,
but it's funny what you said too about, like how people will get you, you came from this, you weren't fired up, blah, blah. And I think a good point to make too is technology is really young, right? So I'm just thinking back to my short career. I came on career in 2007, and I remember having a BlackBerry, right? And here we are today, teleconferencing with people across the country. Zoom has been around for however long, but it took a global pandemic for people to utilize it to get in touch with, right? Like this. So, if you think back to 9/11, one of the things that blows my mind is how technology was not there yet. There's very little actual footage, right? Can you imagine a 9/11 now with everybody Facebook Live? You'd have 50 different angles of the event. So it's real easy to forget that technology gets exponentially faster. So I say that to tie it into, I think part of the headbutting going on in our profession right now is that, it wasn't that long ago where you just kind of took for granted what your department did was the way it was. And I had this conversation with a friend of mine the other day about, local stuff. Well, why didn't we notice this 10 years ago? Because 10 years ago, we didn't go to conferences and we didn't have friends outside our area. It wasn't a thing. So you assumed, like the fire service taught you, that the officers appointed over you would develop you and teach you what you needed to know. So if they taught you it was okay to come in and sit in the day room all day, well, this must be normal, right? Because that's what these guys are doing. And now when you start reaching out to people outside your department, different cultures, different ways, different experience levels, Now you've got this ammo to come back and sit down and say, well, yeah, this is my new point of view because I've learned this and that. And that rubs people wrong, especially the ones that haven't found those outside influences. So I think I'm not telling people not to be fired up by any stretch of imagination, but if you're on the side of people that are really into the job, you kind of have to remember that with people that this is relatively young to be able to pick up the phone and call a Dennis Laguerre or a Kurt Isaacson, right? Or a, insert famous chief speaker here that you can get in touch with to talk about your job when you couldn't do that before. So all you had was the person on the rig with you.
Yeah.
Sean, what you think?
Yeah, I'm going to touch on that technology, because here's the biggest thing. New iPhone comes out, people want it now, right? There's pre-orders, people buy that sucker right quick, right? Your TV's too small, you upgrade it. You get a different one. Smart TV, you get that. Whatever it is, everybody wants the latest and greatest. So when we look at humility and we look at ourselves, then if that's what you want, right? And we could do that in our personal lives with things that really don't matter. You have to have the humility to look at yourself and say, maybe I need an upgrade too, right? Maybe I haven't been doing things correct, or exactly the way that maybe I should have been doing them, right? Maybe my approach is off. Whatever the case is, you have to humble yourself and realize, like, I learned this skill. We'll take that for example. I learned this skill 20 years ago. It may have worked very well then, but here it is. Times are different. I've got to break my barriers down and understand that it's okay to take advice from somebody who may be subordinate to me, right? Or any of that stuff, and fix myself. I need that upgrade, because if we're not constantly upgrading ourselves or each other, then like we've been saying this whole time, you're stagnant, and that's not fair to you. That's not fair to anybody in the firehouse, and that certainly isn't fair to the civilians that we're supposed to protect day in and day out.
Yeah, man, and I'm gonna take advantage of that to transition into my next rabbit hole for Jeremy on something he said earlier too. But things change, right? And what worked with your crew of veterans, like you talked about with Sean earlier, right, doesn't necessarily work with a crew full of young people. Maybe your station changed, your department changed, maybe your district changed. Maybe you were a primarily rural district and all of a sudden suburbia popped up overnight, and now you have to adapt your tactics, right? You have to evolve your thinking. Things are different. You went from running 1 call a shift to 11 calls a shift. Maybe you used to go to a fire every week and now you go to 50 med calls a week. I don't know. But to touch back what you said earlier, Jeremy, you mentioned followership, which is something I love to talk about. I think it's the next wave of the fire service. I think it's where we're kind of missing the mark. And I say that because I think things have changed. And this ties into both humility and growth, right? And kind of that age-old question of the why with the younger generation. So I'll just give you my theory and I'm going to let you run with it. You can tear it apart if you want, or you can support it. We'll see where it goes. But I think that the why thing came up from a generation of firefighters that moved up to power, whether it's company officers, chief officers, that came up under the previous generation that automatically told you why without you having to ask, right? You had enough jobs. They were the World War II era, right? They just showed you how it was. They were happy to take you under their wing. You walked in the fire station, there was no question, because they were running you around the house. This is this is that. You do this, you do that. They told you what they expected. Where now I think we've kind of pumped the brakes on that, and the kinder, gentler approach, the servant leadership misunderstanding in a degree. But do you think maybe now the reason that followership isn't there is because we're not doing as good of a job at leadership as we think? Meaning, hey, I'm not telling you to shut up because I'm a jerk. I'm telling you to shut up and learn before you ask questions. Learn the way we do things and why. We will show you why. And then if you still have questions, ask them. But instead, we stop every 4 seconds, right? Why? Well, now you're mean if you don't address it right there. So that's just kind of my theory, is that we didn't have to ask why before because it was automatically shown. And I think now we've pumped the brakes to where we're waiting for the why. Well, I'm not going to show them unless they ask. And I think that's a failure on our part as instructors and officers and administrators.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why it's a failure on our part. Because you're here to be seen and not heard. Nobody cares about your opinion. I don't want to hear anything out of you, like that kind of thing. But yet in that same sentence, we'll say, if you have any questions, ask. Mm-hmm. Well, we make them so afraid to ask questions because God forbid you have an opinion about something, right? and things like that. So in the same context, again, approach, like the way that you're delivering your message to these people from day one is, hey, you're here to do a few things: clean the rig, clean the station, empty the trash, like do all these other things, and maybe if we have some time, we'll get down to training. Whereas before, it was training from the start. You know, is all the chores and stuff were still important; those needed to get done, but the emphasis was, I need to know that you can be here and you can function the way I need you to function. So I don't know where that got lost, but I can tell you that I do see a shift with it. I do see a shift with now people are coming in and these kids are a lot more apt to ask questions and they're hungry for that knowledge. And the saddest part is the people that should be able to give it to them, the 20, 24-year guys, don't have a clue. And then when somebody does step in, it's like, well, what do you know? You know, I've been doing this since you were in diapers. Great. But you know what? Clearly you haven't been doing it well enough, and you couldn't humble yourself to admit that, because somebody who's been doing it 6 years has to fill in for you. So there's a huge generational gap that I think contributes to a lot of that. They just refuse to listen. You know, they don't want to change.
Or like Jeremy said, right? They don't have the humility to say, I don't know. Let's go figure it out together, right? I should know, and I'm humble enough to tell you I should know. And thank God you came to my crew, because now we're going to go learn together, right?
Absolutely.
I think I probably am just wording it different than both of you guys, but so just kind of speaking through a little bit of my experience. You know, like I said, I've been on almost 19 years, and so it's a good length of time to really be a part of a couple different generations. I don't know what you want to call it, different mindsets, I guess I would say. When I got hired on, we had chiefs that would tell you, you are hired from the neck down. That's what you're good for. I had a chief tell us that firefighters are like fine wine. You know, you smash them until you get, all that stuff. It's just stupid crap. And that's the mindset that the department had back then, is you be quiet, you do what you're told, and that's it. And so what does that breed? Exactly what you're talking about. It breeds people that don't ask questions, that don't know anything because they didn't learn anything. That's exactly what that's going to breed. And so I think the whole millennial thing and the why thing, I think is hilarious, because I'm definitely not a millennial, but I guarantee you, when I'm passed down something from above that I don't particularly agree with, and I don't get a why attached to it, I'm freaking ticked off. There's nothing that fires me up more than to have to go along with something and not get a why attached to it. So I don't really get why that particular generation has got stuck with that kind of bad mojo, whatever it is. But man, it's
not to cut you off either, but
right. Yeah.
The millennials are 30 now. They're not even the generation in question. We're like another generation past the millennials now, right? It's just the catchphrase because it sounds like they're, modern and futuristic, but literally the millennials are turning 30. So it's like, was it Generation Z now or something? I don't even know what it's called, but it's young people asking young people questions that they have asked since the beginning of time. Every generation was going to end the world to the previous generation. They didn't have a clue. They'd never be the same. They'd never do the job like us. And hey, guess what? Maybe that's good, because hopefully less of us are dying from cancer in 20 years, right? Because we learn, things that the previous generation didn't know. And I'm sure they thought, air packs were silly, like we think things are silly now, but it usually plays out that way. So, but again, going back to what you were talking about, that ties into growth, right? Growth is not simply about skills. It's about mentality and strategy and tactics and leadership and, the administrative side as well, and budgeting. It's all the same thing. Everybody has to grow constantly. Otherwise we're just going backwards. You're never going to keep up. It's a constant battle.
Yeah. And this kind of, I'll take this chance to kind of go down a different, not really a different direction, but continue in a direction is that is our job. And I don't care what if you've got 5 years on and you're kind of in charge of a new person, or if you've got 20 or 30 or whatever, but it is your job to make these people better. Whoever it is below you, however many however many people it is below you. If you're talking about station officers, it could be a whole crew, or the higher up the more you got. But man, we have got to take that more serious than we are. And that's literally the situation I've talked about several times on different formats. But that's why I'm sitting in this chair right now talking to you guys, because I got a new firefighter on my crew last year, a little over a year ago, I think, something like that. And it made me realize that I am ultimately responsible for where this person goes. I can sit around and do nothing and expect him to have learned everything he needs to know in rookie school, and we're all good, and just let him go down the path of, man, this is what we do, is just sit around and wait for something to happen. Or I can step up and be responsible for teaching him something every single day, letting him understand that it's important to grow every day. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter, if it's just sitting and listening to a 30-minute YouTube video to maybe gain some different perspective on something that we didn't have. Whatever it is, it's important to do that. And all the questions that are asked, if you don't know the answer, then gosh, that means that you better be getting better yourself. And so that was huge for me. That is a huge weight on me. And now it's something that I really want to maintain. The firefighter I have, the youngest one, he's old, almost a year and a half now on the job. And so he's kind of maybe getting out of that younger phase. And it's almost like you get baby fever. I want to know. I want somebody else that's hungry to come in and bring that passion, bring that drive, because I feed off of that as well. Man, if you are a new person, you don't bring any knowledge with you, that's fine. But I guarantee you better be bringing some drive, some passion, some readiness to do something, because that's what I want to feed off of you. That's just gonna fire me up to do better for you. And then that's the cycle, man. You got to give what you have. And
Yeah, that's how you battle those ebbs and flows, though, right? You train
Yeah.
your crew to motivate you when you're not motivated, right?
Yeah.
Because again, you're not gonna want to do it to the 110% every day, and that's the best thing to me is when you come in on a day that you've already decided, right, on your way to work, you have already decided I'm not into it today. Whatever reason, you woke up on the wrong side of bed, your commute sucks, you're not into it.
Yeah.
And the best thing in the world is to walk in the firehouse and have the person you least expected on your crew walk up to you and be like, hey, I know you don't really look like you're into it today, but I really wanted to go over, single person ladder throws today. Hey, thank you. You reminded me that I'm here to do that. Now some people will blow you off, whatever, but if you're any sort of motivated, like at all, if you don't respond to that, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it's funny because I just see one of my guys just logged in, and this is a conversation that I've had with him and the others. Is my crew is a crew of 5. It's me and 4 other people, and that's the mentality I want to get to. Is I don't want to be the person driving this every day. I don't want to be that person, because it doesn't work. Sooner or later, just like you said, I'm going to come to work and not want to do crap. That's when I want these other people to step up and pick up that slack. And it doesn't have to be every day. I'm not asking for you to be that person. I'm just asking for help on those days, for somebody to step up and maybe take the reins. And that's big, big, big to keep that upward swing right there.
And I think a big part of that too is something I've realized is I've hopefully matured in my role, is that this whole concept that you can leave home at home, I think stops that, right? You could tell people that all day long, but that's not the case, especially today with phones. Your phone's going off all day. So I find that it is far easier to learn your people, recognize the cues when they are not themselves, and go ahead and let's just take an hour out of the morning to sit down and figure out what's wrong with you today, so we can get it out there in the open, hopefully get you some relief to where you can actually be productive for a little while, instead of telling you to suck it up all day and we don't care. And, though you got to leave home when you cross those bay doors, it's all business all day. Shut up. Come on. Nobody is like that. So let's just, if we're going to be the family we say are, let's be family. Let's talk about your problems. We're probably not going to fix them until we get to the kitchen table where everything's fixed. But, until then, we can at least get you in a better mindset, and I go back to when my first assignment ever is I guess I was a engineer was the rank, but, in the right seat. I had a guy who had a kid and he'd come in tired every day. And, we had that stupid sleep rule where you couldn't, until 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, you couldn't go in your bedroom. And I finally had to tell him, I said, look, bro, you had a kid. Your kid is up all night crying. You are tired. I would rather have you go to bed now and hopefully you get an hour or two of sleep before we catch something than have you run around here like a zombie all day. We get a good call and you're no good to me. And I don't care if that violates policy. If somebody has a problem with it, you send them to me because that's my job as your boss is to recognize that and hopefully take care of you that way. Now, this is not going to be a from here on out, you can go to bed at 11 a.m. thing, right? But until this kid, learns to sleep through the night, I'm going to try to take care of you. So, but I go back to that growth side too of it's not always skills. Sometimes it's people skills. Sometimes it's growth in learning how to be a leader by doing things that aren't necessarily by the book sometimes, and the humility to take the hit when that becomes a problem, but knowing it was still the right thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been, I say it a lot. That's been my biggest struggle, biggest area of, maybe even growth a little bit, but still a huge area for me that I have got to keep growing at is just the personal relationship side of leadership. It's the dealing with people. It's the dealing with different people that are reached a different way and that are get motivated a different way. And, the more people you are leading, the more variables are in play. And it's just ridiculous the amount of different things that you have to know. And, you have all the different tools and you got to use them a different way on different people. And it's just, it can get overwhelming sometimes of trying to do these things in the right way. And it's just, I do it to 3 people one way and it works awesome. But that 4th person, I do it the exact same way. And it's like, I'm freaking doing the opposite. So yeah, there's a lot to that. It's a mess sometimes.
So I'll ask you this. Would you say that getting 1 or 2 hours of quality training, improvement, learning, whatever you want to call it, with a crew that maybe is not as bought in as you are, is equal to or greater than getting 8 hours of that crew that's jacked up for the fire service all day?
Man, if you are on a crew of however many it is, and every single person is fired up and ready for everything that you want to throw at them, that's amazing. And I can't imagine that I can't imagine that it's very many across the whole nation. There's chances are you've got at least a mixture. And so that being the case, or at least that's how I feel, that being the case, and this is exactly what I tell my crew is, man, I'm just asking for, like you said, a couple good hours. Give me the morning. And of course, there's going to be some cleanup. There's going to be, some different things going on in that morning. So really around those things, give me 2 or 3 hours. Give me on the weekends, give me 45 minutes, whatever it is. But if we can do something that betters ourselves, that makes me feel like, man, okay, that was worthwhile. I feel like we did good for the day. Man, I'm good. I absolutely good. You got to take a lunch and, we'll just deal with things that we have to deal with. That's all I ask. And I guess that's kind of answering your question. Absolutely. If you're getting good quality training where everybody is involved, everybody is giving great effort, giving great attitudes, and just really being engaged, man, there's nothing else I'm going to ask for. I'm not even going to attempt to ask for 8 hours of training a day. There's no way. I just want to get to that 1 2 hour level, and at this stage, that's great for me at least.
And see, I asked you that because I think sometimes when it comes to growth, we're looking for a home run and we don't realize that getting a crew that never trained before to ask for training is huge growth. Getting a crew that never worked out before to work out is a giant leap in the right direction. Now, you can either stop there and get stagnant again, or you can choose to build on that. But I just feel like the expectation out there by the social media stuff and all that is, and I think we talked about this when I was on your show, right? If you're not out there pulling 2 miles of hose a day and PTing for 3 hours in full turnout gear and, listen to 8 podcasts and, all this before lunch, then you're failing. And it's not the case, right? The growth is just like little baby steps making yourself and your crew better than they were yesterday, right? So if you go on a call and somebody does something right they've never done before, you grew. So the small victories end up the bigger picture, and we just don't always focus on that.
I think something that's interesting about that is, Steven, my relief driver that is on my crew is listening right now. He's been to different stations traveling, and he's told me that, man, I really hear these other people saying that you're asking about what's going on over there. You guys are training all the time, and just kind of conversations like that. And it's funny for me to hear that because it's not. We're not training all the time. I mean, we're doing a little bit every day. That's it. That's not that much. But the sad thing is, it probably is a lot to most people because they're not doing anything. But that's kind of what we get into when people like us that we're doing things like this. We're being verbal and vocal about training. We're putting pictures out there, videos on social media about what we're doing. So it can be skewed and it can be kind of taken as that's all you guys ever do. It's not really the case. And I don't want it to look like that. I just put stuff out there for others to kind of maybe learn something or maybe get some inspiration on a different, drill or whatever to do. That's all I'm doing. I'm not trying to look like all we do is train. I'm just trying to show what we're doing and maybe that's kind of something, and Brooke and I talked about this a little bit. That's kind of a downfall with the social media stuff is people take it beyond the realm of what it really is. It's just trying to do the right thing and do the best you can for the day. It's really it.
Yeah, dude, I couldn't agree more. Where are we going to take this, Sean? We're ready for another rabbit hole, I think.
So everything is, it's spot on, and I don't know if I could really sum up what you guys are talking about any better. The only thing I want to add is plateaus, right? Everybody looks at a plateau like something's wrong, like what's going on. We were increasing and now we're just kind of like maintaining, and plateaus are great. They're natural, they happen. Anybody who works out knows about plateaus, right? You get to a certain point where you have to do what? You have to shock your system. Be like, whoa, so it resets and then you can keep going. Well, that's kind of the whole point with a plateau. And if we're talking about growth, especially, it's important that we take those plateau periods and regroup and analyze, like, okay, this is where we were, this is where we got. Let's regroup and refocus. And how are we going to get to the next objective, right? And maybe you'll see a difference. Maybe you'll see, hey, we started here, like you were talking about working out, right? We started working out, and it was only 2 of us, and there was 3 of us, there was 4, and then we like lost 1 or 2. How do we re-engage, right? We get up, dust everything off, and next thing you know, you might have 5 or 6 people with you, right? So it's just an adaptation period where we have to put the focus into, like, is what we're doing working? And if it is, how do we improve that to keep going? And I think a lot of people get to that plateau period and they quit, right? They just get there and they're like, man, we're doing so well, and now it's just kind of lost. And that alone kills every bit of forward progress that you might have ever made. So I just want to throw that in there to, you just got to let things kind of take its course, and you got to stay dedicated to the outcome that you wish to have.
And sometimes too with that, when you plateau and you're in a good place, maybe it's with hose movement, right? You guys are moving hose crazy effectively. You're constantly, eclipsing what your expectations are. Then it's time to grow somewhere else, baby. Put the hose down for a couple shifts. When's the last time we did ladders? When's the last time we got our mask on? When's the last time we forced the door? Or maybe we need to change something. Oh, we just realized we've only been doing this in turnout pants and helmets. Maybe we should put our coats and our air packs on and see if we're actually as good as we think we are. There's usually a natural progression there, but even if there's not, then it's time to go back to something else. And then after 2 or 3 weeks of that, let's see if our hose game is still where we thought it was. And if it was, cool. Now we know, let's go back to something else where we can. That's the growth cycle. It doesn't, if you're like me, and I'm guilty, I'm as guilty as the next, because hose is my go-to because I enjoy it. I think I'm halfway decent at it and I'm fairly knowledgeable at it, but it's real easy to get stuck in what we know and what we're good at and always trying to improve that versus saying, well, for me, I'm really bad at rope. It's time to grab the 3-to-1, and see if I remember how to tie anything, because last time I did it, it didn't go well. But it's so easy to just say, I'm not good at that. I don't want to grow in that area because I'm not good at it. And that's right. A huge, huge failure in growth.
Well, and that it's also the humility side, right? You take that plateau, you take that break, and you maybe shift your focus into something different. And you find out man, I'm not nearly as competent in this as I thought I was. That's a kick in the gut. Here I am thinking that I'm pretty squared away, and I just found out that ropes is my weak point. That's a humbling experience, especially when you're doing that in front of people who are looking up to you. Like, man, this guy or this gal has everything figured out, man. They're jam up, and they're looking at you try to tie a knot that you haven't tied in years, and you can't do it, right? So that's really to me, the plateaus define growth and humility all at the same time if we use them to the best of our advantage.
Yeah, two things that I want to go off on about what y'all just said. And first, I'll say it before I forget, but kind of what you're saying, Sean, I think teaching is a very big test of humility, because teaching very quickly exposes the gaps in your knowledge. If you don't know everything about whatever you're doing, it's going to show really quick. And not that you have to know everything about what you're doing, but you are going to find areas that you need to get better in, and that's a good thing. That's why people say that, man, I learn a lot more teaching than I do, being a student, and that's very true to a lot of people. And so, having that humility to see those things, and if you're asked questions during something that you're instructing or teaching and that you don't know of, then it's okay to say, man, you got me. I don't know. It's something I've never really learned, or it's something that I've not tried before, but we'll go try it and we'll see, see how it goes. It's just the being honest. It's just that type of mentality. And I think teaching is very good for that. And so I like that kind of that topic. But there's something else that I wanted to say for sure before it goes anywhere else is I love the plateau conversation. I love it. And it is literally a conversation that I had with my crew a couple weeks ago, because that's where we were at. We were on a plateau, a very long plateau that was starting to get very frustrating for me. I started adopting the mindset of just, okay, if nobody else wants to do anything, nobody else wants to step up, and I'm just going to go out and do it myself. And okay, that's fine. You're still doing what needs to happen, but me being the person in charge of that crew, I just wasn't okay with just being the go-to of just doing it on my own. And so that is I tried to be very open and honest about my situation during that conversation of saying, man, I'm very proud of each and every one of you at the table. I'm super proud of where you are, where you have come, all that you've learned and got better at. But there is nobody at this table that has reached their potential, not even close. And so, although we're not in a bad spot, we're just literally, that's the word I use, is we're just at a plateau. We're on a level ground. And so this is the time to reboot, to just energize ourselves, to commit, to start that process of climbing back up the hill start growing, start getting better every day. And that's where we need to go, because like I said, we are not where we're supposed to be. This is not the end goal. This is just a stopping point to where we're kind of settling out and dealing with some stuff, and just kind of focusing on making it through the day because of everything going on. But now it's time to get moving again and start headed back up. And so I love that conversation. I think everybody probably needs to have that conversation. And that's the key right there, is having the conversation, being honest about, I'm not happy where we're at. We need to do better. And just giving that information and being upfront, instead of being upset that nobody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. But if they don't know where you're at, if they don't know, all of that, then you can't hardly expect somebody to be where you're at mentally and mindset wise and all that if you don't be open about it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, man.
So
Go ahead, Sean.
No, I'll let you finish. I was just saying, I think this would be like the perfect time to see if anybody has questions or anything that they want to jump in with. We've been at it for a little over an hour now, and I thank everybody for their time and joining us. And I'm just curious to see what anybody else has to say.
I was literally going to say the same thing. And why people are coming up with their questions, you can either put them in the chat box and Sean will read them out, or if you would rather get on and say something, just say that and I can unmute you. And while people are thinking of their questions or input, I'm going to leave it on this, Jeremy, to build off what you just talked about. Let's talk about goals and benchmarks for a minute. Where are you at with that as far as setting reasonable goals, regional benchmarks as far as your growth? I think sometimes people are way over their head about where they want to get in the amount of time. I think we briefly touched on it earlier, right? But what's practical, in achieving those goals, and what have you been successful with your crew, with yourself, as far as saying, hey, these are the small steps I'm going to take to make a big difference down the road.
And that's another very, very complicated thing, because nobody has the same goals. You're laughing like you set me up for that or something, but
no, I was just laughing because that's the answer I would have gave. Well, it really depends on who you are and what you want to be.
But no, I mean, everybody, like I talked about earlier, everybody you kind of have to deal with everybody differently, but everybody's on a different plane as far as just where they're at. And somebody mentioned in the chat earlier is meeting people where they're at. And that has been yet another area that I have really had to learn and grow at, because you might have somebody that is super fired up, that loves training and will do anything that you ever want to put out there. And you might have somebody that's at the very opposite end of that spectrum that you have to drag out, claw on the ground to do something. And you might have several people in between. And so, and it kind of goes back to something that Scott Thompson quote is, how do you define success? And that is a huge, huge question. And that's probably a question I still don't even know. I mean, I think, like we talked about earlier, getting everybody out every day and seeing a little bit of buy-in. That's kind of where I'm at right now. If I can get some buy-in from everybody for a reasonable amount of time every day, right now, that's a win for me. And that's kind of a benchmark that I have for some of the people that I have, is just getting them out there and getting them involved. And so that's, and something else that goes into that is knowing your people and building those relationships and having some clue on who they are and where they're at. Because if you stay in your office all day long and you don't know these people, then you're not going to have anything to judge anything off of. You're not going to have anything to measure anything off of. So getting out, building respect, building trust, building a relationship with whoever you have, to truly learn who they are, learn their wives' names and their kids' names, and just be somebody that shows that you care about them, and all of that, man. It's just such a huge picture. And as you do that, then you kind of learn, okay, so and so, Tommy, if I can get Tommy out for 15 minutes a day, that's awesome. That's his benchmark. Or if I can get Tammy out, and if I can get her to the point where she is comfortable with this skill finally, that's where I need to get with her. It's going to be different with everybody. There's no way around that. And I know that's kind of probably a cop out answer, but seriously, it's hard to sit and say this is the answer to that question, because if you're saying I've got it all figured out and this is an easy way to fix that, and I don't know that that's ever the case.
No, I love what you said, and I think you hit it on it right. Know your people. Know where they're at and where they want to be, and also know where you need them to be in their job. So maybe you have a firefighter who thinks they want to be a company officer down the road. Okay, cool. I want you to get there too. But to get you there, I need you to be good here right now. And I'm going to help you get there how I can, but I need you to help me get to where you are right now. And I think another big thing there too is, don't judge people for their goals, right? That's not your place. Your place is to help them get there, try to influence them if you think maybe they're going off course. And I know something that's helped me with goals is I've evolved my company officerism, for whatever you want to call it, is that, the destination is a lot of the time what I need to be worried about. The path is not necessarily the important part. Maybe you don't want to get there the way I would, but maybe I can help you get there your way. And that's going to help you a lot more because you learn things about yourself along the way. It's not me shoving it down your throat. You're going to grow. I'm going to grow. We're all going to figure it out together. But that's my big thing. Know your people. Don't judge them for their goals. And remember that, especially for the officers, your job is to help them get there, right? It's not to do it for them. It's not to tell them where they have to go. If you want to be a tailboard firefighter for your whole career, awesome. But you're going to be damn good at deploying hose, right? And you're going to be damn good at teaching other people how to do it when they come on. So,
yeah.
Sean, you got anything? I don't see any questions in the chat. I'm kind of disappointed.
No, I got a question from Brooke Ames that I'm gonna get here in a second, but here's a little shameless plug that I'm gonna throw out there because I think it's important. When we talk about capturing progress, everything we do in the fire service is capturing progress. Everything, right? We're making a push on a fire. We want to capture that progress, right? We're cutting on a car. We want to capture that progress. So I have this little quote that I throw out there, and it kind of sums this up pretty well. Lift an inch, crib an inch, create change, capture the progress, right? It's essential. That's really what we're after with anything, right? And you can break that down into even individuals. When you're working on somebody's mindset or skill set, it's little steps. And when you break into those little steps and you have that little bit of progress, you got to capture it. Once you capture it, that now becomes your foundation to build upon to create more space, more improvement, capture that. And that's how we keep going. So if we can break it down simple, like what we do on a vehicle extrication, right? We lift, we crib. Why? Because we have to have that progress to get the end result that we need. Well, that applies to just about anything we do. So Brooke's question is, so tell me, Jeremy, how do you, as the officer, create buy-in?
Man, you thought my goal question was hard? Good Lord.
yeah. Appreciate my friends.
I'm going to mute myself. Good luck.
My friends are really hooking me up here today. Man, that's another area, and I keep saying it, and it is absolutely the truth. These are real life areas that I have grown, have failed, am currently growing, am currently failing in, and it just goes along with what we're talking about. It is a work in progress, and I have no answers. I just know some things work sometimes and some things work no times. And so to answer that the best way I can is just keep doing what you say you want them to do. If you are trying to think of how to word this. So just speaking me personally, I have this grand vision of the culture I want to create. I know what my crew should look like in my head. I know what it should be like when I come to work, and for me to enjoy where I'm at and for us to succeed in everything we do, I have a vision of what that's going to be to look like. So that's the easy part. The hard part is that I have to do the work. I have to be the one to live up to these expectations. I have to be the one that does the 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 I have to be the one that brings the energy to make these things happen. Because if I put that on them, it's not their vision. They don't particularly want to be on a crew that's exactly like the one I want to be on. So why would I put that on them? I have to be the driver of that every single day. And so I think the best way to answer that question is to be the one that's doing the work. Be the one that is showing everybody, hey, he's a captain. He doesn't have anything to do with pulling a hose around, but he's out there and he screws up quite a bit, but he's okay with that. So how can I avoid that? Why would I be able to avoid that if he's not? If he's out there, I should probably be out there. And that's to me, there's not a lot that you can do to inspire people. And I know Brooke is not a fan of the word motivation, and her message has caused me to not be a big fan of motivation because it's here today and it's gone tomorrow. So to truly inspire the people that are underneath you, the the only answer I have to that is to be the one doing the work, to every day be the person out there. If you want to start a crew that trains every day, then you better be out there every freaking day doing something. And it doesn't matter if you're the one doing it by yourself, you better be out there doing something, because the day that you don't do something, that shows everybody else how important that is to you. And so I, I think that's the only way I know how to answer it, is you have to be the one doing it. And don't just ask, don't just tell. You have to be the one doing it. So I don't know, that's the best way I know how to
Oh
answer
man,
that.
I love that, dude. And I would tell you my version is this: is that you can question my tactics, you can question my strategy, but you'll never question my passion. There will never be anybody in that firehouse. You can say whatever you want about me, but you will never find anybody that will say Marc is not into the fire service. It won't happen. You can fault me for being in the fire service, but that is not the fault you're going to find with me. I want to be there every day. I want to do the work. I may not be the best. I may not be the most talented, but damn, I want to be there and I want to do the job. And if I'm out there doing it, like you said, especially as a company officer, what's your excuse? I'm in the bay 12 hours a day. What's your excuse?
Yeah, and with that, Marc, it's funny because in the fire service, we always put like experience as like that's everything, right? Experience is everything,
And it's
except when
equal
it
to
comes
time, right? It's
right,
experience equals time, but not
right,
really, but
yeah,
sometimes.
and where that's false, incredibly false, is with passion. Passion is the one thing experience cannot teach. You either have it or you don't. It's plain and simple, right? So if you're talking about leaders and leading from the front to inspire your people, and you're using that passion to fuel that fire, that the other side of the passion is that it's contagious. People are going to look at that and be like, man, that guy's always out there, like all the time. And that alone sparks interest, which eventually creates buy-in. And they may not do it every time, but the fact that you stay true to yourself and your consistency in your actions, that alone is going to drive everything into that direction where you might only get one person, but that one person is now fired up and amped to do things, right? And that spreads like a wildfire. And one of the things that we talk about is human behavior is fire behavior, right? And if you look at like a wildfire, you got your different stages, like smoldering, creeping, running, torching, all that good stuff. That's behavior. So you spark that little interest in somebody. Next thing you know, like that small interest starts running, it creates a bigger interest, and over time, and they're just so fired up, like it's a freight train, you can't stop it. And the one, the one time that you decide not to do what you preach, I promise you, somebody will call you out on it, and that's where I think we start failing. So it's all about accountability, in my opinion.
And what you just said, man, talk about people noticing you're out there and saying, oh, he's out there. I would say it like this, and this is my experience with it, is that the right people will notice when you're out there being passionate. The wrong people will show themselves out the door because you're being passionate. They can't keep up with you. They don't want to keep up with you. And if you keep applying that pressure and people keep following you with it, the wrong people will find their way to something else. And to answer Brooke's question, that's how you create buy-in. You get the wrong people to find the door on their own, so you don't have to do it the hard way, through the fire department.
Yeah, Nick Saban, and I know.
I know Jesus,
you're not a fan.
We almost made it.
It's true though. What does he say? It's about.
I don't know. He's Alabama. Nobody listens.
It's about getting the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus.
All right, he's kind of smart sometimes. Okay.
Whether you like him or not, that is the truth, right? I mean, that's really the ultimate goal. And when you create that within your organization, whether it be in the firehouse or just your standards for the people that you hire or whatever it is, like you said, people will see themselves out. If you have a shift or a station that continuously trains or has a set of standards that nobody wants to meet, guess what's going to happen? They're going to either A, request to be taken off that shift, or B, not bid to go on that shift from the beginning, because they know that, hey, it's going to be a hard road in front of them if they do. So when you create those environments intentionally with purpose, man, that alone, you're creating your own culture right there, right? You have everything you want. This is what my expectations are for my crew. And when you have visitors, maybe people get floated into that station, they're going to know it too. Trust me. Because you're a visitor that day, and whether you want to do it or not, you're going to do it, and you may not come back, and that's fine, because if that's not something you want, then I don't want you there either, and that's the conversations that we have to have.
I'll let one more thing here before y'all go to wherever you're going to go. I think another way of answering her question, and maybe as simple as I can break it down, is just be somebody worth their inspiration. Be somebody worth for them to look up to. If you want to motivate, inspire, whatever the word you want to use, if you want to do that to the people in your crew, then be somebody worth that. If you're looking to motivate somebody, if you're looking to do something that the crew has never done before, then be somebody that is worth that to the people you're trying to be, that you're trying to lead. I think that's probably as easy as I can break it down. It's kind of the soul.
And be first, right? That's something I like to do. If we're trying something new as a crew, I'm the guinea pig. We're trying a new hose load, I'm going to fail first. We're trying a new ladder throw, I'm going to fail first. I'm going to show you that it's okay to come up there and screw up, because I'm going to do it. I'm going to set the example for you. I don't care what I look like. I've passed. That ship has sailed for me. And I know I suck most days, so I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to let other people see that that's how you get better, is by going out there and failing and learning from your mistakes. So, anybody else got any questions? We're like at an hour and a half here, so I don't want to, be too abusive of your time, although we could sit here with your soothing voice for another, hour and a half of my day. I already had you, Egan, and John for my ride home today. So this is a double dose. I'm doing good. So, and as always, as we get ready to end it here, we will leave the meeting up for those that are unable to speak freely on recorded sessions due to their employer restrictions, and then have our little our little fight club afterwards where we can actually talk without the recording. So, Jeremy, man, I loved it. I loved having you. That's twice this month I got to talk to you too, like in an official capacity. So I think we're doing pretty good. Thank you everybody who signed up to be with us live. I hope you got something out of it. Sean, you got anything else before we hit the record button?
No, man, I there's a lot going on on social media today, and a good thing. A lot on culture, a lot of good people speaking their minds. So I definitely appreciate everybody taking their time to be with us. This is what it's for, right? We created this thing for all of us to come together and share our passion and our views, and kind of create a space for all of us to talk where we might not be able to otherwise. So huge thank you to all of you guys who registered. I also sent you, Mark, the I just sent it to you in a message, that quote. So if you want to send
The
that
Nick
out to
Saban
anybody,
quote?
no, I wouldn't do that to you. But no, I know you hate him so much. I might send him your face all the time, or
Oh,
send
that's
you his face
horrible.
all the time. Give you
Well,
some nightmares. But
I think
that quote's up there.
I think I'm going to sum this up, our growth in humility conversation, with something I read on Mark Von Oppen's page the other day, and I'm going to look at it so I can quote it. And of course, now my Facebook doesn't want to work. But I believe he said a person's volume is not directly proportional to their influence. And I think that's extremely important to remember when you get into growth and humility. You know, the loudest ones are usually the least influential in a lot of ways. And that's ironic for us, right? Because we're all loud and obnoxious on this. But I take that to the firehouse any day. It's the ones you want to get behind that are growing and growing to humility are usually quietly in the corner working out their skills while somebody else is making fun of them. So, you know, keep pressing on. Jeremy, you got any closing words for us, sir?
No, just where we started off. If you want to grow, if you want to learn, you've got to humble yourself. There is humility in anything, any progress that you make. And so if you're struggling in an area that you just don't feel like you're growing or learning, or you know, whatever it is, maybe it's because you need to gain a little humility. And so life is a way of teaching you humility if you can't find it on your own, but it's always better to find it on your own terms. I'll say that. And so just keeping a humble mind, trying to gain confidence and learn, but stay in that sweet spot. You know, just stay humble, stay growing, and just keep going. That's all I got, man.
Absolutely, man. So, well, very cool. I enjoyed it. I hope everybody else did. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. It's episode 4 with Jeremy Sanders. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.